anymore, so, you know.
So, ratings can add up to 170%. Why would somebody get compensated for 50%?
For 50?
Like, I hear this a lot. They rated me for, 17 different things, and it all adds up to 600%, but I only got 40%.
Yeah, so, like, the best way I've heard it described is that it's a cascading scale. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like cutting an inch in half. So the first time you walk in, they say you're a 100% whole person, and let's say they give you 50% for your headaches. Now the VA says there's only 50% left of you. Mm-hmm. So you turn around, you file for your PTSD or something, and they give you another 50. And so according to our math, that's 100%. But really that new 50% only goes to the 50% that's left of you. Mm-hmm. So now that you only really got 25% out of that. So now you're at 75, which they'll round it up to 80, but you're not hitting that 100, you know? And so that's where the unemployable comes in. Is because some of these guys, they have a lot of issues, but like your knees, your back, your joints, they're usually 10s and 20s on average, 40 if you're lucky, but then you're talking about severity of like, how lucky am I?
Yeah. Yeah. Lucky is a relative word.
Right. And so like, when it comes to that, I think it's harder for guys to get to that 100% even though you're really jacked up.
Yeah.
And so that's where the unemployable comes in to help get you to that 100% pay rate, even though you can't necessarily hit it with their skills.
Yeah. And that's actually being fought against.
They got knocked down on that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they were trying to kill off the unemployable for somebody like 62 and older, which is 100% BS. Because like, what I've noticed when it comes to veterans is like, you either have an issue that really affects you from your ability to work, or you become some kind of a workaholic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But if you become that workaholic, eventually you're going to retire. And when you retire, now you could think. And when you think, all that BS comes back. So even like when President Obama cleared the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was getting so many gay vets from like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s that they were recalling all this stuff coming back from their experience, because it was on the news now. Mm-hmm. And same thing when it came to the Korean War and the World War II guys, when they started seeing our war on the news, it brought up their stuff. Mm-hmm. So even though you were this guy who's working his whole life and doing all these things, this stuff kicks back in.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I promise you, I've talked to guys who are over 100 years old, and they could tell you exactly what happened.
It's similar to, it's funny you say that, because I've never actually put it in perspective or words like that, right? But thinking about it, if the layman thinks about when you were 4 years old and you got in that bicycle accident.
Right.
If you can remember that, and you're a 63-year-old man, or you're a 35-year-old guy, and you're telling me a story about, when you got popped on the football field,
right,
and lost your breath, it's the same mindset. And you have to understand that, like, being in a place of war is a little more, it burns on the brain.
Oh, a little
stronger.
Yeah. And I think it clicks in. So, like, even though you're like, oh, I was in Vietnam 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's still gonna hit you.
Yeah. Especially as, like, these movies now that come out, they're like,
oh my God.
They're very, like, vivid, and they're, like, I'm blessed to not have been in situations like that.
Right.
But I can imagine that
I can't handle them. Yeah, I don't watch those war movies. Yeah. Like there was a cop movie that Jake Gyllenhaal played in. It was a cop movie around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he was around LA and stuff. And me and my brother were watching it, and I didn't realize how bad I was getting in the zone. Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple scenes where he's like running between buildings, and like, I swear to God, my hand was on your shoulder, like following, And my brother's like, what the hell's the matter with you? And you look, and my hands were sweaty as shit, And I was there. I was right behind you. I was, like, making sure no one was coming behind you. And, like, dude, it was weird.
Yeah.
But, like, I was in it. And I thought I was okay because it was a cop movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this isn't military.
Well, people don't understand. Like, here's the deal. People absolutely do not understand the power of the brain. Like, you can go on to day-long conversations about how strong our imagination can take us, how strong our memories and just the power of belief. I mean, and that's why it's so hard for me to, like, wrap my brain around how somebody can have a 5-minute conversation and then tell them that they're not depressed or they're not suffering or they're not, you know, they're making all this stuff up. And I'm like, man, you don't know because you're not living that guy's shoes.
Right. So. And it's hard because like you see some guys like say like you were a cook in Vietnam.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, you're just a cook and try to blow you off, you know? And you know, as a Marine, like your MOS is not your MOS. Mm-hmm. That's just like a job you have when everything else is cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, but I promise you do 1,000 other things.
Yeah.
And so like they don't get the stress. And especially if you're a cook in Vietnam, like how many bases got overran. Yeah. And your ass is absolutely infantry at that point.
Or even if you're an NCO and you're in charge of, you know, 30 to 300 other guys.
Right. Yeah. You know, like there is a toll that it takes on your body, like mentally and physically, and like to try to like downplay people, I think is really negative. And when it comes to like those outside of like medical exams that you're talking about, the thing that bothers me about that, especially around here, is most of them are ran by Lockheed Martin, and the VA's rules, it says that it's supposed to be an unbiased medical opinion. But I don't know, and I don't know if that's just my crazy conspiracy brain for being a vet, but like I don't believe that's unbiased when they got military contracts.
Yeah, they're a military contractor.
Yeah, so like say I injured myself on your military vehicle.
Yeah.
And so I say, oh, this vehicle hurt me. And you're like, no, you didn't.
I got you.
You know, because it was the same thing like when the Prius, remember the Prius pedals used to stick?
Yeah.
And what did they say? Oh, your wife don't know how to drive. Bring it to Toyota, we'll look at it. And they say, there's nothing wrong with your car, you're full of it.
Yeah.
And then eventually they said, oh yeah, there's something there.
Yeah.
You know, but it had to go from an outside group to do it. But the groups that they send veterans to are Lockheed Martin. You know, that's the QTC and the MSLA. Yeah, these guys are doctors, they don't necessarily work on vehicles, but if your boss is that boss, who are you helping?
Yeah.
You know, are you making sure the boss is cool with you, or are you taking care of your people?
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I got lucky when it comes to my bosses, like George Dixon and Bob Saxon. Is like George from the get-go told me, like, your boss is that guy in front of you. And so long as my vet in front of me is happy and like you get all your answers questioned and everything like that, or all your questions answered, and then we're good. You know, so I don't have bosses hanging over my shoulder.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to the medical exams, I firmly believe that there is a bias there. I really do. Yeah. And I don't think they're the greatest medical people that we should be sending our veterans to when it comes to judging. Mm-hmm. You know, like you said, you're looking at this guy for 5 minutes and judging his whole life.
Yeah.
And it's just whether or not you believe it or not.
Yeah.
And if you've never been in the military, can you understand what this guy's talking about?
Yeah. So, one thing you've done is seen a ton of people. You said about 1,000.
I file about
1,000 a year.
Yeah.
And that's just filing.
Yeah.
There's many more you see.
Yeah.
So, what's the biggest moment of hindsight when it comes to misreading a situation? Because, I mean, you've had to have misread a couple. Go ahead.
I remember one guy came in and he had like a dog tag that was like faded to all hell. And like the older guys have a serial number, you know, they don't have their social.
Yeah.
And the serial number was like 3 digits off, you know, and you're like, nah. And I was like, I don't know if this dude's a vet. And like he was saying he was with the Navy, but he was like over here and all this stuff. And you're like, not feeling right, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, come back and bring your paperwork, you know? And so we filed to go get his paperwork. And sure enough, he comes back about a month later and here's all his stuff, you know? And the thing when it comes to my job is I'm not supposed to be judging anybody.
Yeah.
You know, I'm supposed to help.
Yeah.
So whether I think you're full of it or not doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's about take care of them.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what happened to you in service, but I think when it comes to your disabilities, you should know better than anybody else. And so whether or not it's in your military record doesn't matter either. And when it comes to hindsight, I think the biggest thing that I've learned when it comes to the VA, it's the sad part of it. It's not necessarily about the truth of what happened. It's what you can prove. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's the obstacle we have is, can you prove it? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just sometimes it's hard to prove.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you always give that person the benefit of doubt, no matter how wild that story is. Like, you're trying like hell to believe it.
I'm sure you've heard some wild ones.
Yeah, I've definitely heard ones where you're like, kind of doubt it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I talked to one guy that
like that one changes every time you're at the VFW drinking.
or like yeah, right? Like now you're trying to blow it up bigger than who you are. And like I promise, like I tell people all the time, like if there was like 10,000 books written about the Iraq War, none's gonna be written about my unit. You know, so like I'm not the special like thing at all.
Yeah.
I just believe in my people. You know, and I've seen the struggle for myself, and I've seen what I believe are like far greater, far more honorable people than I'll ever be struggle. And so, like, I think take care of them.
Yeah.
When you see an error in life like that, you have to kind of stand up for something. And so, whether it's you're by yourself or not, you have to. That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as vets, we're kind of used to that. Standing up when it comes to like that opposition, regardless of how big it might be, you know. And I really believe like you just got to do it. Like whether or not you die from it, like you have to stand for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You got to do what's right. Like, and that's what it's all about. Is just take care of these people because like they actually earned it. They really did. And to sit there and try to downplay them, I think is just the most disrespectful thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the VA is like if you keep picking on veterans and not being able to help them properly, then how do you convince others to join?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how like it would be hard for you to tell your son you should join the military if you know he's not going to get help if something happens to him and nobody cares.
Yeah.
You know, but if everything's taken care of and you know when he gets out of the military he's going to have medical, he's going to have college.
Yeah.
Then maybe it's all right. You know.
Which brings up a good segue to this question, right? Is there anything that vets should keep an eye out for under this or any future presidential administrations?
I think you should always pay attention to the changes. Like, President Trump says he's really about veterans, and so I think we got to give him the shot and see what he does. But then when it comes to, like how the Unemployable claim was trying to get shot down for our older vets, our group stood together, not just the DAV, but DAV, American Legion, you know, the VFW, they all stood together as one and said, this shit ain't gonna fly.
Yeah.
And it got killed. It got killed quick.
Yeah.
You know, and so regardless of who the president is, I believe we still gotta pay attention. We still gotta be vigilant and pay attention to what's going on and who are we putting in charge.
Now, how can we get vets to pay attention? Where should they be looking at?
I think like you said, like the Marine Times, the Army Times, and all those little things. I think there's a website called hadit.com. And it's just veterans talking about veteran stuff, you know? All those little things, like, you don't want to fall on those little clickbait BS, you know, things on Facebook. But talk to vets. And there is 1,000 rumors out there. And that's why you want to look past it. Not just, oh, my buddy told me this. But ask him who.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, even when President Obama was in there, everybody's like, he's taking our guns. Like, what bill is that?
Yeah.
Who else signed off on it?
Yeah.
Nobody has an answer.
They're still saying that. Like,
yeah.
Somebody in Arkansas is still in their bunker right now.
It's still, you know what I mean? And so instead of just feeding into the BS, take a second to look.
Yeah.
You know, if a president's going to do something, there's a bill that has a number, that has a title.
Yeah.
You could look into this. You know, it's not hard. Go talk to your congressman. Like, over here we have Tony Cardenas, and like, I've witnessed this guy sit down and talk to vets and say, what's going on? What should we change? And he talks to vets, and it's not just the dudes in the suits with the high rank or the high titles. He's talking to dudes like me and you, you know, and that's what I respect out of him is like, you could talk to these people. They're not these imaginary things that just go vote. You know, like they're real people that we can talk to, but we can't be shy about it. You have to get off your ass and go talk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the city councilman, there's the board of supervisors, there's all these different people around here. Like, we have the San Fernando Valley Veterans Employment Committee. There's a big committee in College of the Canyons. USC has a great committee. Like, there are people trying to figure things out, and I think you stick with those groups and you stick to each other. Because if it's just me and you BSing at a bus stop, the odds are we might have something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking to a group of people that are about it, we could probably get closer to a real truth.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what it's trying to do, is like figure out the real truth, because it's hard to find truth in it with a capital T, but you want to get there as best as you can.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just because of your beliefs, it's about the truth.
So with that being said, I put out on Facebook and to my little community that you're coming and having this conversation.
Yeah.
And there was 2 questions primarily that wanted to be asked, both surrounding vote.